Welcome to the 24th Annual Miami Jewish Film Festival, one of the world's largest and oldest Jewish cultural arts events. We want to thank all of our members, our sponsors, community partners, volunteers, all of you film lovers, and especially our presenting sponsors, the Center for Advancement of Jewish Education and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation, for their continued support throughout all of these wonderful years of films. My name is Rabbi Jamie Aklepi, and I am a rabbi at Temple Beth Am in Pinecrest, and I am an avid Jewish Film Festival fan. I love to see as many as I can. I love to interview those who have written, directed, portrayed themselves, created the stories behind these films, which generate so much interest for us, so much learning, so much compassion. I am thrilled to be here this morning with the writer and director of this very thoughtful film that you have seen, thoughtful, intriguing, personal, sometimes heart-wrenching film, my favorite, War, written and directed by Ilze Burkovska Jacobsen, who is here with me right now, all the way from Norway. Welcome, Ilze. And where are you now? What part of Norway? And tell us what you're doing this moment besides talking to me. What are you up to?
Hello, thank you so much for inviting our film to your festival. And yes, I'm in Norway. I have lived in this town called Tonsberg now for 25 years since I finished my directing school. And it's a small town in south of Norway, and it's a bright day of March. Actually, 2 days ago, we got snow again. So it's getting a bit winter back again, but we are very in the feeling of spring, ready for that. In these pandemic times, you always need more and more light in your day.
Right, right. Well, we are in Miami of lots of light, and luckily we're in a place where we could be outside so much even during this pandemic. So Ilze, again, thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing this story. This is your personal story, animated on film, as everybody saw. And so I have a number of questions to share with you. Tell us at what age you left Latvia, and what was the leaving like?
I was 18. I finished secondary school, and I had a plan, as you saw in the film, that I wanted to become a journalist while I was in school all my years. And then in 1989, there appeared a very, very small announcement from some cultural society of Norway that there are 10 places for students from Latvia in Norwegian people high schools. And Norway was a very closed country because it was a NATO country. We didn't know anything about modern Norway then, but I had very big interest in Norwegian literature. I loved, Ibsen and Sigrid Undset, and all those relations to Norway have been like from pre-war past. And I thought I will go to Norway for 1 year, applied. We were like 500 young people asking for those 10 places in Norway, because it was, at that time, it looked like an announcement from Mars. It was completely unrealistic because it was, as I said, capitalistic country. We knew something about Sweden, but nothing about Norway. And it happened that I was one of those at the end 20 who came to Norway in 1990. And, I came with a Soviet passport as a Soviet citizen, but in my mind, I was leaving the free Latvia, because Latvia in the May had declared independence from Soviet Union. It wasn't acknowledged by any country. So in the juristic way of looking at things, it was still a part of the Soviet Union. And Soviet Union still forced the army on Baltic states in 91. And at that time, my mentor in Latvian television said to me, if you can, stay in Norway for studies. Don't come back to university here, because here will be only chaos. And it happened that I started to study in Norway. I met my husband and I married and I stayed here. And since then, I have been trying to make all my films for Norwegian audience telling about my hometown. So I'm saying that I'm living kind of with one leg in each country. I'm trying to travel back and forth as much as I can. So it has been very strange to live in Norway, but it's very close. Yeah.
Culturally, do you think it's close? Language is not so close, but they're...
No, not languages, but I would say that we are rural people, both of us, both nations. I grew up on the farm, and I can see this, rural way of thinking, both in Norway as in Latvia. We are a country of farmers and fishermen, and I would say Riga has been a bit more like a European city, while Oslo has been like more province of the Europe. I can see the differences, how much cultural life is appreciated in Latvia, and it's less in Norway, I have to say, because about the status what they are giving to the people representing artists. I'm not complaining. Norwegians have been very, very kind to me. I have been able to make my films in this country, but I see from the perspective of the audience how much artists and art is appreciated in Latvia. It's a different story in Norway.
Got it. So Ilze, when did you realize you had a story to tell? And why did you, and why? When and why did you realize you had a story?
I have always been very fond of history as a, object in school, and then I was cleaning all the books after my mother passed away. And I came over once more over this book about where this scriptwriter then is telling his childhood story from the World War II. And that happened, 12 years ago. And I saw that book, which I had in my school days. And I thought, this story about how they were pushing civilians at that time during World War II in the region of Courland, that I have to tell this story because I still felt that there is always armies who are the big heroes of the narratives and the films and stories, but there are too little focus on the civilians. So that was my main idea, how I started, and I thought it's only possible to tell those stories in animation because there are no archives of the experiences of the people. So my first idea was I have to make it in drawings, and then I started to put together all those stories about the people being captured between two armies between them for 8 months. At the end of the war. And while I was working on this project, I got all the time those questions. Yes, but it wasn't so bad as in Belarus. It wasn't for you so bad as in Ukraine. It's not the worst war story you are telling. You have to tell more about your own experience. Why are you telling this? And it turned more and more out about this pioneer from the 80s, looking back on the war story. So the protagonist to me came more into the film as I wanted and thought in the beginning when I was starting to write the script.
How long did it take you to write the script from a portrayal of a moment in history to making it your history and your discovering the real history?
Oh, I was, when I presented the idea to the Norwegian Art Council and the Norwegian Film Institute, they said, yeah, okay, it's interesting. It's interesting angle to look back on the past by your point of view. And I got an artist grant in Norway for 3 years. And it kind of gives you the space and funding to be in peace and write. And I was laughing because there are very few artists who get this grant. And I said, oh, now I have a paper that I'm mad. It's official because they have given me this. And then when you start writing, then what happens is that you are kind of personally broken by the trust, because they have trusted you. Now you have to tell a good story. And I was doubting all the time. Can I manage? I'm good enough. Is it good? So actually, I ended up crying in the start when I wrote it for 3 months, because I thought how to manage all this, your own ambition and the trust from others and the money, and you can disappoint anyone. And exactly this combination to tell to myself, okay, it has to be personal. And when I settled with that idea, I was able to start to write the script. So it took me at the end to combine all those different timelines and stories. It took me almost 3 years.
And, so I think, so from what I understand of growing up under the former Soviet Union, people didn't really share their personal stories and feelings. And so when you went back to interview people and to speak to people, how long did that take to get people to really open up and to tell you not just the truth of how they remembered what happened, but how they were feeling and how that truth affected their lives?
Yeah, the strange thing is that I got this feeling that we don't understand our current time while we are living in it, that we need some perspectives by years and even decades to understand what was those processes, as stamp for the timeline where we are living. How does influence us? And the biggest problem for me, actually, when the film is finished, is that people now in Latvia could say that, no, I was never supportive to this communist regime. I was all the time in the opposition. Our family, we were so outstanding, and we were this rebellious, and we were so, and it's not how I remember it. The majority was silent, and the majority didn't have the courage to push things. When it opened up, then people started, step by step, but very small steps to go forwards. And of course, this wish for freedom was there, but now I think that it's important to tell this story, because it's so easy to say that I was on the right side of the story from the beginning. And right. And I think that's an interesting issue, how you can question society on what it's not about are you bad or you are good, but it's do you really are honest enough to say that you were brave enough in that time or not. So the memories are a tricky thing. Yes, how to get people to open them, because sometimes we want to color us to be in the better light as when we were in the current day when those things happened.
So I have to say then, responding to that, you're in the film, how you portray yourself such a great pioneer and wanting so much to be the best, it made me so uncomfortable. I felt sort of like, oh, where is she going? How is she doing this? Doesn't she understand? Here's somebody else who is excuse me, lost to that system. And I looked like this is a person who's now become shallow and only interested in what she can achieve, and she has now, like everybody else, closed herself off to that reality. So that was hard. Those pioneer stories were viscerally hard for me. You went back and you spoke to your best friend from childhood. Yeah. Is she still in Latvia? She was a confidant for you, and she seems to be, through the story, somebody who is beginning to glimpse what's really happening. How did she stayed in Latvia, and what was her coming out to say, of coming out to the truth? What was that like? And what was that like for your relationship?
Ilge is still one of my very dear best friends. So I knew about that day, the exam day, what happened. And I needed it very much for my storyline to tell that she was much more braver than me, because we were going to some demonstrations, at that time, like for the cleaning of rivers and like a going with a rebellion spirit of the time, and mostly it was about against pollution and all those things. And she was really several months ahead by saying out loudly what she meant. And I remember this mixed feelings in her at that time. And in the very beginning, when we started to shoot this film, I went to her because I knew that the film will be a mixture of the animation and live action. And I filmed with her, and she said we were in our school hall where the exam was when it happened, and she said, "I really love to see what I was writing, because I would love to see the words I had." And all this, what happened to her, influenced, of course, her emotions. And I wasn't able to get this right story short enough to make it good and how to say, short enough for my film. So at the very end, I found out in the editing that this episode doesn't work, and I have to reshoot it. And I had to say, "Ilge, please say me one more time. I have to go and ask you those questions one more time." And she said, okay, let's try. Let's do it, because it was very hard for me to be very direct and ask her, what did you felt? How did you felt then? How did you plan it? How was it? Because she's, as she said, she doesn't return so much to that trauma for herself.
Okay. The stories with your grandfather, who was in Siberia, and then I guess repatriated, if that's or rehabilitated, that was the Soviet word. And when he questioned you, the child, about your loyalty, and he says, "Are you red all the way through with the tomato, or are you just red on the outside, like the radish?" How did you feel when somebody you loved and admired so much questioned you, really questioning your core values? How did you feel at those moments? Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember that day. I had to, for the film's sake, add the characteristics of those vegetables, because he actually was saying, you have to consider, you don't need to be just a tomato, you can be also a radish. And I understood that for the wider audience, I have to add what does it mean, because it's also a picture of how we were speaking. It's so hidden. So if I am 12 years and he's saying you can be also a radish, not only tomato, for me it's clear. The one is white inside. But for the audience, I still had to add this in the word.
Right.
Also, to get it understood. And how I felt, that was terrible, because that was the moment when I started to understand that actually, in the one side, that in this process of mine where I was happily marching in the school and thinking that my mother is happy because she's looking how I'm doing well and how I am kind of taking this role of leader and aiming my points for all my goals in life. Suddenly I understood how the point of view of my grandfather is on all that, because we never talked about it, and all the my school life to him was more like characters or subjects that you're learning, the content, and then suddenly this out school life came up, and he was so sad that actually I would say that was the first actual shake of my soul. The first time when I look at him and I saw how sad he was in his eyes at that day. That was, you know, the real pusher starting my mind to spin around. What shall I do? How will I continue? What to do? And in that sense, I would say that this manipulation of children being in this communist youth organizations, it's very successful, because you as a child, you want to be on the side of the good ones. And you want to tribute, you know, in the good belief that you are doing good things. And those good things were very visible. Those were those concrete things, by, like I'm showing in the film, collecting herbs and paper for recycling and all that. And then suddenly I thought, well, all those reports we have to write, they are actually lies. And I made up this dialogue in my film where I had to find the words and phrases with no meaning in altogether about this communistic report. The aim was to make a dialogue which doesn't have any sense. There has to be just a, you know, line of words without sense and without meaning.
So for those of us who grew up in a free society, from when you first showed the teacher, peace is the most important thing, but everything after that was really the opposite of what she was talking about. That incongruence comes very clear for somebody growing up outside the Soviet Union, but it wasn't so clear to you children, right? You wanted to impress the teacher, you wanted her to like you, and when you realized that what the teachers were teaching was no longer truth, how were you able to, was that how you were able to continue just stringing together communist phrases that would then elevate yourself, but it was just a facade?
Yeah, you know, that's this very tricky thing about being Soviet person, how you are adapting to those double lives. You see something from outside, like the surface of your body, the surface of you as a person is participating in something, and you see everybody does it. And then there is a very strict watching of those glimpses somewhere in between, when people open up and show, maybe just by the smile, maybe just by the gaze or look or something, that you can sense that they disagree. But I had to go back in my mind and collect those moments. How do I remember when I started to watch other teachers, not this my particular teacher, but other ones, and watching at school, that there were people not agreeing with what was going on. But in my case, I was luckily for the film blessed with this particular person as my first teacher, and luckily for me as a person, because she traumatized us very much. She
traumatized me, and she was only an animated figure.
Yeah, she was a convinced communist. I mentioned to you 1991. What happened that, you know, the communist organization in Latvia was already kind of liquidated. There were no members on it from, I don't know, 1990. She was still remaining as a member of the Communist Party in our town in 91. And when there was a coup against Mikhail Gorbachev in August in 91, she was the only one person in our town who supported those coup makers. And by that, you know, and she was alcoholic, which is sad, but she was also so bad as a teacher, screaming and shouting and even physically punishing us. We have so many bad moments as children with her during those 3 years, that I don't feel bad showing her in this way, because she was really a convinced communist. And by the way, she was also a leader for the atheist organization at our school. and that was her cover for some economic cheating. She was kind of receiving salary as a leading the organization for new atheists, and she never organized anything for that. And that was actually one of the reasons why she was fired from school.
Mm. Yeah, she was quite a character. I would not have wanted to be in her class or have any of my children in her class. You know, when I watched the movie, I you know, which I just loved. It just resonated, your struggles and your discovery. But I also couldn't help feel like the way I felt when I saw Everything is Illuminated. So much the story and history is what isn't said. It was all hidden. So as a child, can you remember now as a child feeling this push and pull of wanting to be that good pioneer, but instinctively knowing, like when you came across those bones, instinctively knowing that there was a hidden truth that nobody was talking about?
Yeah, that is the difficult dynamics of growing up, that you are, as you say, push and pull all the time. I realized in that moment when I saw it was a human skeleton, and it was, as you see, when I discovered those bones in the sandbox as a 8-year-old girl. The houses, the blocks were built kind of in the, for me it was desert. It was so ugly place, just sand all around, and this sand was taken in the middle, and somehow, because that's not far from the cemetery and not far from the hospital, I think there has been, some turbulence around this earth, why it happened to get on that sand pit where I was living. And then I thought, I understood. It was all the time, all this worshipping of the Soviet heroism of the Red Army. And I thought, if there is a dead body in there, I connected to the war immediately. And I thought, if it is a Soviet person, then there would be a cemetery, and then there would be, some heroic marking. People would be sent to put flowers here. So he has to be enemy. And that feeling that there is an enemy kind of scared me, because you see this film, the pieces of documentary, which was again very traumatizing for me to watch in the first class, the film of Mikhail Rom, the usual fascism, and even the dead German soldier is scary. It's like an incarnation of death who is coming to get you. At the same time, I'm raised in this typical traditionalist Latvian farmer family with very strict rules how you behave against dead corpses and cemeteries. You don't step there, you don't disturb them, you don't talk loud there, And I thought, okay, I have disturbed, and he is even evil, so he has to be wanting to come for me. So that was this feeling of bad consciousness. Why I didn't tell my mother that I have, so I thought much later, because there was this combination, number one, I disturbed the dead one, and number two, he's even evil, so he had to be even more angry at me. But those moments when you understand that there is truth somewhere, like when my grandfather was listening to Voice of America, this radio program, it was heavily disturbed. The waves, the Soviet Union were pushing into these radio waves. It was terribly as a sound, and you couldn't understand those words they were saying. And still, there's feeling that they watch the road all the time, as you can see in the farm. They watch the road. If some stranger comes, then you have to turn it off immediately, because you never knew who is it and how they will report on you. So this double connection, that there is some world somewhere there, and still just don't talk about it, is kind of this strange upbringing, which was haunting me. I needed to make it all in this film, I guess, to get it out of my personality too.
And you didn't have any nightmares from that sandbox experience? That would be so frightening for a child, because certainly, and not sharing it, but you weren't raised in a society that believed in any talk therapy and believed in any sharing, that nothing bad could be shared. That's a very hard way to grow and develop any kind of emotional connections and stability, knowing that here are all these feelings and I better not share them.
Yeah, you know, and when you're talking about putting word and putting name on it, describe something, how you feel. We were raised from the very, very beginning to put the connection to the happiness or joy in your life with the gratitude to the Soviet state. That was the official formulation, why I'm saying we were defined as the happiest country in the world, because the state said so. And at home, people wouldn't say you are happy because you are a Soviet citizen, but in this other space, in the room of society, it is all the time connected, that your personal feeling of joy, like everything good, is just connected with this. It should be filled with the gratitude that you are in this particular state, Soviet Union, because the state takes care of you, because you are just by the definition, the part of the greatest thing happening ever. And that's very hard, you know, how much we are talking about feelings nowadays and trying to set word on it and express ourselves and to kind of understand ourselves. And at the same time, you know, the Soviet experience is just to make the picture unclear and don't be aware at all what you actually feel. And I think that's why we have so much sorrow and anger in us as a Soviet people.
I think that even when I look at the pictures that you posted in school, I told you my husband grew up in the former Soviet Union, his class pictures with family photographs, nobody ever smiles. There is never a smile. You're in your school uniforms and no one is smiling to this day. I can't get my in-laws who are 90. Today is my mother-in-law's 90th birthday. She was born in Mogilев-Podolsk in the Ukraine. They cannot. It's like the muscles don't work to smile, and it was just so much inbred, even though they had a Jewish culture underneath the Russianness. Still no smiling. So your film was brought to the Miami Jewish Film Festival. What connection do you think that your film has for Jewish people to see? I mean, most of the films, not all, but most of the films that we see have a Jewish content somewhere. What's the universal or even Jewish connection in My Favorite War?
That is a very, very painful question for me, because for a very long time, I wanted to include this bad consciousness of how the Holocaust was developing in Latvia. It's not a proud side of story and history, what happened in Latvia. In my birth town, where I came from, Kuldīga, there were 10% of the population were Jewish, and it means it was about 900 Jewish persons, and there is only one who survived. And I was trying to put this Holocaust question in my film, and then I understood that it's not possible to get all those lines together. Then I have to tell only that story separately, and because it needs all those perspectives. And why I'm so still standing here in this question about Holocaust in Latvia, which I think is very shameful part of our society for Latvians, is because this only one Jewish person who survived was the adopted son of my great-grandmother. And there is a strange family story, because for many years I thought that she was brave by adopting Uncle Max during the war and saved him. And only then I understood that later it wasn't just a good heart. The story, can I tell it?
Yeah.
My great-grandmother was born in 1890, and she got two children, one of whom got polio. My aunt, my grandfather's sister, got polio in 30s, and she wasn't able to walk, and my grandmother had to do very much to save her daughter. And at that time, when her children were about 15, or they were about 15 when the war started. But in the 30s, in that town, in where they were living, where I'm born, as I told, there were about 900 Jewish people, and there was this young girl who got pregnant, and she was 16, and her family thought that it was very shameful that she was so young and becoming mother before 18. So her family decided to send her to United States, and the boy was offered by family to adaptation for some Latvians, and my great-grandmother adopted him because she needed the money to get to the hospital with her own daughter. So she raised 3 children, and one of them was a Jewish boy, Max. And she was, and she made him, you know, to the Lutheran by his belief, like taking him to the Lutheran church, and all the time keeping him like a, you know, the Latvian Lutheran person. And she, all that happened with the Holocaust in late 41 and 42 in town, she was very afraid that Max will be harmed, and he had a bad sight. She took away his glasses, so she was afraid that somebody will discover that you know, it could be so typical that he has a bad sight and he could be discovered. And my grandmother told later it was so badly done by my grandmother, because she was afraid that at the same time Max was afraid to go out because he couldn't see without glasses. And then she had an idea, if he sticks out so much with his dark hair, that she has to wash it in some chamomile tea to make it light, to make him look like a Latvian. And he got only very bright red hair, and he was even more visible in the town, but he survived. And I remember Uncle Max as a most joyful man from my childhood. He played accordion, and he was laughing most of every man in all gatherings, as I remember him. He died quite young from a heart attack in the mid-50s. But what happened in the 90s, it was that suddenly from Chicago, they came 4 of his half brothers to visit Latvia and to find the family, because his mother never told her new family in United States that she actually had a son in Latvia. She told them only before she was dying. And then she didn't have a clue where he was and what happened. And those 4 sons of her started to dig up the story, and via newspapers they found the family of my great-grandmother. She had passed away too, so they visited my grandmother, and there was a very special meeting with those people. So it's a long story, and I wanted it also to be a part of the film, but I felt that that is exception, and it wasn't done only by a good heart. My great grandmother, she was really lovely, and I can't say that she did something mean, but I wouldn't say that, that she was the brave one who opened the door in the 40s when the people were knocking and asking for help. She did it already in the 30s. So Max was already the part of her family, and she was just saving him during the war, doing, what she could for the for her son at that time. And I feel it's not a typical story either. For the Latvians, so it would be wrong to put it in front and say that that there were too few cases of people handling like this.
That's another amazing story, Ilze, and wrought with all sorts of choices that people make under duress, and to save their own lives and to save other people. It's an incredible story. Just another question now. So you have left the oppressive childhood. You have grown into a productive, creative woman, and you have children of your own. How has raising your own children, those your children we see in the end of the movie?
Yeah.
So those two cute boys. How do you raise your children differently? Are you intentional? Are you intentional thinking about when I grew up, it was like X, and I'm going to make sure that they are feeling the way I listen to them, what's presented to them is different? Do you think about that? Do you think about your past experiences in raising your children? When my husband uses his past Soviet experiences to raise our children, it was built out of fear mostly. How dangerous the world is, how terrible people can be, and it came how terrible it is to be under the pressure of anti-Semitism and be oppressed that way. And so his early upbringing, the first 16 years of his life, was always brought in a fearful way. But somehow I just get the vibe that you do it differently, also somewhat different generation. How do you are you intentionally thinking about raising your children in a different mode than you were raised?
Yes, we hopefully sometimes are taking experience from our mistakes. And I have to admit that I have been angry at my mother that she kind of put me on this idea of becoming a journalist from very early age when I was 7, because it was kind of my father's life and career was interrupted. And she put me on this path, on this railroad, to say you have to fulfill what he didn't achieve. And I was so committed to do those right things just to get to the goal of my life. And of course, I think my mother was right in that sense, that she knew that I'm a kind of storytelling person, that I'm more in the arts, not in the exact sciences as a type of my way of thinking. But it means that I decided that my children will never be pushed to take some specific goals for their profession as a status. If my children will decide to be anything what is not status in society, but feel that they are happy with that and they feel joy of what they're doing, that they will be allowed to do what they are pleased to do, and not because I'm concerned about my status as a successful mother to putting them, in some status position by profession. Because I thought it's more important that you are happy as a child and not be the person who has, just fight for your goals to achieve this or that. So that was the biggest difference. And I'm a bit sad that maybe I wasn't pushy enough again for their schoolwork to follow up. Maybe I should have been a bit more strict, actually. But I see very much that I was I have a daughter and son, and they are both grown-ups now. Those pictures in film were shooted in the very beginning when we started to film, just to settle beginning and the end, kind of the frame where we are going. And I really admire my daughter since her very early teenage years, because she has been able to read people's psychology and people's reactions and people's personalities in much better way than I am as a grown-up, because she has been raised in the free society. And I am very often too quickly falling in the too short kind of conclusions about how people react and why and so. And she is always this second opinion person in my life, saying, let's consider it from that angle and see this and that. So I have learned very much from my children to have different angles and perspectives on other people and situations, because that they are not damaged by, by the system and state where you have to be afraid all the time. And that's why I'm very little telling them examples from my own childhood, because we can't compare. It's not comparable at all.
And if you hadn't gone to Norway, where do you think you would be in your life today?
Hopefully I would be in Riga. I don't know if I would been a director, or if I would continue this program making, editorial, journalistic way of career. I don't know. I really admire the Latvian journalists who are now working heavily for the democracy and heavy issues of the problems we have in society. And I feel that, okay, I'm fighting, in my my world of arts by storytelling and wanting to get in connection with many people by telling stories. But I don't know if I would be a journalist or not, if I would stay in Latvia.
You're closing, my last question, I think. I have so many questions, one leads to the next. Your closing scene was showing the authoritarian leaders being washed away. It seems to be a charge, a call to action for people. When people see that, what do you want them to do next?
I struggled enough, I struggled a lot. I mean, to make a closure of the film, and I want to say that the toughest thing, of course, is integrity. You don't have to be Greta Thunberg. You don't have to be Malala. There are few of us who are becoming those frontal figures of the big movements, and in the new young age, be able to formulate the big ideas for your generation. As a people, it's still, I think, the most difficult thing, just to keep your integrity in these questions, to sort out what's good and what's evil and what's what's damaging for the society. So my call is, please keep this kindness in you to other people, and maybe if you are strong enough, then you can make those small steps by connecting other people and achieving small things for your community, in that way building your society. But if I look, as I tried to make it as a kind of poetical picture, I think that our development as a humanity, despite everything, has led us to this day where I think we are more kind to each other than we have been in previous times. And that, by that I mean that those leaders who are approaching just fear in us and making up equality, they will disappear. Their names will disappear, because the human kindness, which is made by all of us, millions of people, it still has this red thread in us, pushing us to, I think, to handle in love and not in the hate.
Thank you, Ilze. Ilze Burkovska Jacobsen, thank you so much for sharing your film, My Favorite War, sharing yourself, your insights, your story with all of us here at the Miami Jewish Film Festival. Again, I want to thank all of our members, our sponsors, community partners, volunteers, all of the film lovers that make this film festival so successful. Thank you, Sage. Thank you, the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. Those of you who are watching this have seen the film. Now you may want to go back and watch it again. Thank you so much, Ilze. It's been a pleasure. We wish you the best of luck and only to go from strength to strength at this time. Thanks so much, everybody.